Vice President Vance has said that the Insurrection Act is currently on the table. And I want to talk today about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, especially for the gun community.
We are the superiorly armed beings.
Hey everybody, Yankee here. You know, I'm well aware that we live in a society now where most people have been brainwashed into thinking that the threat to the American way, the threat to their way of life, is, their cousin Jenny down the street who believes in universal health care, or their Uncle Tom who is against illegal immigration, or their cousin Steve who voted for this politician or that politician. That's the enemy. Your next door neighbor who doesn't agree with you on every single thing that we've conditioned you to believe, they're the enemy of America. Not the billionaires that own all the media now. Not the billionaires that own all the politicians. Not the billionaires that own all the judges. The rich that have basically corrupted every single branch of our government through the power of money. They're not the problem. It's your cousin, your neighbor, your friend. Those people are the problem. And because of that, we've got people now cheering the fact that we have elected representatives saying that they're going to invoke the Insurrection Act. We'll show those people you don't like. We'll get them, and we'll only go after them, of course. And people are buying it. And I want to talk today about how that's garbage. Now, I know a lot of people have been spooked by the Antifa boogeyman. Let me tell you, there's no reason to be afraid of Antifa. They are nothing. There's very few of them, and the ones that there are powerless. Most of them are just children. They're about as scary as a pack of chihuahuas. And I speak from experience. When a lot of these gun channels are telling you how dangerous they are and how scary they are from the safety of their living room and their basement that they would never leave because they're fucking cowards, I go confront these people. I've stood face to face with Antifa, face to face with Proud Boys, face to face with every extreme there is. I've got videos showing it. I've been assaulted at such rallies, sometimes on camera, sometimes not. Not physically, they've done things like knock my phone out of my hand or stuff like that. I'm a relatively big guy, and most people don't want to actually start a fight with me if it's one-on-one. They'd rather find an easy target. That's how bullies work. But, when they get in little packs, especially Antifa, they're like a little pack of chihuahuas. They're not scary at all, but they're loud and they're aggressive. But like I said, I've been face to face with them. They ain't scary. They ain't scary at all. In fact, every decent, middle-of-the-road American, if just 5 of them stood up to a pack of 50 Antifa, the Antifa would run with their tails between their legs. They're little cowards. Or not so much cowards as they're just ignorant. They're children. Like I said, they're a little pack of chihuahuas. They're not scary. And they're definitely not well organized, I'll tell you that right now. I've been there, watched them, seen what they do. They're their own worst enemies, actually. They tear down their own stuff. They fight amongst themselves. They're just not great. The Proud Boys are way more organized than Antifa, I'll tell you that right now. And in many ways, easier to talk to. But like I said, I'm someone who gets out there and experiences this stuff. Antifa is not a giant boogeyman. It's the best they can come up with, but they're not scary. Proud Boys aren't really that scary either. They're in it more for, a big pop on their social media. That's what they go try to do. They're not there to actually get in fights with anyone or get hurt or get arrested. They want to get seen. It's all about social media. So neither of these groups are really scary unless you're someone who's easily scared and you have no personal experience of your own. So I would encourage everybody to get out and have some personal experience. Go to these things. When there's a rally in your town, go. Either as opposition or as support, or just someone who's there because you agree with the actual game. You think everyone has a right to engage in discourse and protest. You don't got to be on either side. It's like here in Portland where they say, well, one of the reasons we want to enact the Insurrection Act is all these places that are having extreme violence like Portland. Well, I went over there. It's like a half a dozen people standing around an ice center, and they're dressed as like giant frogs and cows, and they're giving out cookies. They're real scary. And there's no violence anywhere around it. And in fact, the police are over there telling anti-protesters or counter-protesters, stay away, you guys are causing the problem. The local police are telling the National Guard, if you come in here, we're going to protect the citizens who aren't committing any crimes, not you. But people don't know what's really going on. Because like I said, they're allowing themselves to be fed by people who are telling them things that they know nothing about for profit. If you got out, you'd see there's no reason to have something like an Insurrection Act right now. The fact that it's even being talked about is disgusting. And you have to think, well, if there's no real actual violence, crime rates are even down. And believe me, we have enough police to deal with crime right now. It's just that a lot of people have a lot of different ideas about how crime should be dealt with. And a lot of them who are politicians know that crime is beneficial for them. So they don't want to actually stop crime. It makes you and me easy to manipulate if you're afraid of criminals. So they could solve the crime problem in a year if they wanted to. They just don't want to. But when it comes to the Insurrection Act, that is a horrible thing, that it's even being discussed and that people are supporting it. Because like I said, since there isn't massive crime that they can't deal with, since there isn't any real political violence, there's an occasional act of political violence, but it's so rare that we make big deals out of it. That should tell you something. So if that's not the case, if there's not really insurrection, why would they want to enact the Insurrection Act? Who's really the threat to the powers that be, the billionaires? Well, I think it's people like you and me. The people that are kind of in the middle, sitting watching what's going on, which is 90% of us are somewhere in the middle. There's the extremes on both ends, that 5% on both ends, maybe 10 at the worst. And then there's that 80 to 90% of us in the middle who, we're either a little left or a little right of center, but we have more in common with each other than we do either extreme. We're the threats. We're the ones that if we ever decided which side we were on, we'd be the power. And they know that. And a lot of people are kind of waking up to the fact that it's the billionaires running everything. Everything that gets done, there's a billionaire behind it. Every movement, there's a billionaire behind it. Everything from the Tea Party to ANTIFA and everything in between, there's a billionaire behind it. They're the problem. And their main goal is to make us think that our neighbors are the problem, our other Americans are the problem, when we're just not. We're not the problem. Even things like Antifa, the Proud Boys, any group you want to point at and say they're scary, they're a symptom of the problem with our society today. They're a reaction to the fact that all of our systems have been corrupted and are being manipulated. So they're not the threat. And once an Insurrection Act was enacted in a few states, do you think it's going to go away? Or do you think, well, they enacted the Insurrection Act in Washington. Now California is having major protests. Well, we're going to do it there now too. Oh, look, now New York, now Florida, now Texas. Eventually you're living in a military state, a police state, military police state. And that's what they want because that's the way they can have total control. And they can go after people like you and me. Because once they are in total control in a state like Washington, the billionaires, who do you think they're going to want to go after? Is it the Antifa, a bunch of ragtag teenagers and hippies that have no actual clout or power? Or is it the guy that they know, hey, you go to the gun shop a lot, you've had a lot of purchases, you might have an arsenal. You might not only be someone who might rise up against power, you might be able to arm other people that are doing it. So we don't want you out on the street. Let's take you in for some indefinite holding and questioning. So in every state, and who do you think is going to suffer the most from that? Who are the people that are most prepared, the most able to rise up against their government? I have lots of guns, and so do some of you. Even if you just got 5. If you've got 5 rifles, that means not only can you stand up and fight, but if you decide that, hey, these 4 neighbors that I used to think were just idiots, well, they're also going to rise up with me, so I'm giving each one of them a rifle, regardless of whether they're Republican or Democrat. They're now just American, and I'm going to fight beside of them. So you and me, we're the real dangers to the powers that be, the people that are prepared The people who can not only stand up and fight for themselves, but can help others. That's one of the reasons I have as much stuff as I do is because I always think ahead. I think if things get really bad and 10 allies show up at my door, I want to be able to arm these 10 allies. I want to have 10 armed men with me when I defend my property or their property or our county. I don't want to be the only armed guy defending everybody. And you think the billionaires don't know that and the government doesn't know that? We're the threat. It's not Antifa. It's not any right-wing organization. It's us. We're the threat to the status quo. We're the threat to the billionaires. That 80 to 90% of us that are kind of in the middle, and then that 10 to 20% of those people that are prepared are the biggest threat. And that tends to be the more conservative people like you. And in some cases, the kind of centrist people like me. We're the ones they'll go after first. That small percentage of the majority. The ones that can arm everyone else that didn't think to be armed. It's kind of like in a zombie apocalypse. I've always said that it doesn't really make sense that zombies would suddenly be 1,000,000 to 1 against the people. Because out there right now, there's people that are armed. And if it's only 10% of the people that are armed, well, if they have enough guns to give guns to another 30% of the people or 40% of the people, well, then you got half the people armed. And everybody would just have to kill one zombie and the whole thing's over. That's one of the most unrealistic things about zombie movies is how quickly they grow in numbers. Because we would be better prepared than that. And you notice they always rely on people not knowing how to deal with zombies and not having any weapons. And that's, the government would love that. They would love all of us to not be prepared and not have any weapons. So like I said, when you usher in things like insurrection acts, or you cheer for things like insurrection acts because you're like, they're going to go get them Antifa. Antifa isn't a threat. They're pathetic. I've told you, I've stood face to face with them. Anybody out there that has stood face to face with anyone in Antifa outside their own doors, come talk to me. They won't. When I called out people who were saying things about what was going on, they've surrounded the police department when they've got rifles and they're going to burn it down. I'm like, I'm standing here. That's not happening. The chief of police is on a stage in front of the police department right now doing a question and answer session. You're totally making up shit. Nothing you're saying is happening. But people believe it because they want to make you think that there's a boogeyman out there, either on the far right or the far left, that everyone should be afraid of. And because of that, you should give them the power to do whatever they want to do to make sure you're safe. And when you surrender your freedom for safety, you're neither safe nor free, to paraphrase Benjamin Franklin. And that is still the truth. And I just beg everyone in the gun community out there, wake up and realize that. Antifa's not a threat to you. If you're on the left, Proud Boys aren't a threat to you. They don't want to hurt you. I'd say Antifa probably wants to hurt people more than the Proud Boys do. Because like I said, they're a bunch of angry little children that they don't understand the ramifications of hurting someone. They think it's like life's a video game. But still, there's just not enough of them. And unless you're like walking into a crowd of 20 of them, they never even make eye contact with you. They'd look at their feet, mumble, and walk away. So don't be afraid. Don't allow the billionaires and the powers that be scare you to the point that you surrender freedom, even if you think it's just somebody else's freedom. Because that other person that you're thinking is the one they're going to go after, those people aren't a threat to the status quo. You're the actual threat. They're having to convince you to give them the power to do something to you by pretending it's someone else they're going after. Don't fall for that. It's the way it's happened throughout history. It's that old, first they came for this group, and then they came for that group, and I said nothing, and then there was nobody when they came for me. It's like that, but they're going to come for you first. So don't let it even happen. Because like I said, you and me, we are the people who have the power. We are the people, well, what little power the people still have. We are the people that eventually will have to take back everything that's been stolen from us. And we, the 10 to 20% who are prepared, are not going to be the ones that do it alone. We're going to need the rest of that 80 or 90% of the people that are in the middle. We're going to need a big chunk of them to be on our side. So we need to remember that. And we need to stop falling for stuff like, yeah, we'll enact the Insurrection Act and that'll show the left. Well, the right's going to go down too. Because who believes more in freedom? Who believes more in individual freedom? It's the right. And individual freedom is the biggest threat to the status quo. So if you think that you're giving the government a hammer to squash your enemies, it's going to be that same hammer that squashes you before it goes after anyone else.